TIL that Frank Sinatra and the Rat Pack are widely credited with helping end segregation in Las Vegas, by refusing to perform in venues that wouldn't allow blacks. I am half black, half Puerto Rican, and I converted to Judaism. When I move into a neighborhood, everybody moves out. Sammy Davis Jr. Elvis had a group of black backup singers known as the Sweet Inspirations who traveled with him, and included Whitney Houston's mother. He used his star power to quash the constant bigotry they faced on tours. In one incident at Houston Astrodome, the owner told him privately that he could leave those colored girls home. Elvis immediately told him he would not be performing either in that case. He relented and let them all perform, but Elvis also insisted that the owner's daughter personally chauffeur his singers around in her convertible and fulfill any requests they had personally. In his 1998 obituary of Sinatra, the New York Times' Stephen Holden called the singer a pioneer entertainer in Las Vegas, reporting that, in 1953, Sinatra bought a 2% interest in the Sands, eventually becoming a corporate vice president as well. Most impressively of all, Sinatra deserves considerable credit for ending segregation in Nevada hotels and casinos. He and his pack refused to patronize places that refused service to one of their own. Sammy Davis Jr. My mom told me a story recently about my grandpa, who passed away over 20 years ago. He played saxophone in a backing band for Sammy Davis Jr., who was not allowed to eat in the dining room of the places they played. My grandpa was very upset over this and asked him over to his house for supper. On a few different occasions, my grandparents hosted dinner for Sammy Davis Jr. I would have loved to hear the story from him. And I guess that years later, Sammy saw a mutual acquaintance of theirs and asked how my grandpa was, so it obviously made an impact on him, too. Additionally, the band and Sammy were always joking with each other. Sammy was wearing a fake nose for a bit and the band put black pepper inside it. To the crowd, he didn't act like anything had happened, but he turned around at one point and mouthed, "You sons of bitches." During the band's break, he put hot sauce all over their mouthpieces. My grandpa told my mom that it was so hot but the show had to go on, and they pretended like nothing happened. Obviously because of Sammy. Which is weird since many black people turned on Sammy and didn't consider him one of their own after he stood with Nixon. Strange world, kids. Marilyn Monroe helped a bit with that too. https://www. Biography.com/news/Marilyn Monroe Ella Fitzgerald Friendship. Dorothy Dandridge and Eartha Kitt had already performed at the Mocambo, so Fitzgerald wouldn't have been the first African American to sing there. But the club's owner felt the heavy-set Fitzgerald lacked the glamour to draw crowds. So Monroe approached him with a proposition: if he booked Fitzgerald, she promised to sit at the front of the house every night and to bring along other celebrities. Monroe made clear the amount of publicity this would garner, so the club owner agreed to hire Fitzgerald for a couple of weeks in March 1955. During Fitzgerald's run, Monroe kept her word to sit up front, and Frank Sinatra and Judy Garland showed up on opening night. However, such celebrity firepower wasn't that necessary. Fitzgerald's shows sold out, and the owner even added a week to her contract. This successful engagement changed Fitzgerald's career trajectory. She later told MS Magazine, "After that, I never had to play a small jazz club again." What was the state of segregation in Las Vegas prior to that? Without Sammy Davis Jr., they weren't a rat pack. Bros before racist hoes. Nobody put Sammy baby in the corner. Reminds me of the old story I heard of why Cadillac is a hot brand in the African American community. Way back then, Sammy Davis wanted a Cadillac, but it was uncouth to sell them to African Americans. Frank Sinatra went to the dealer that denied Davis his Cadillac and said, "If Sammy Davis doesn't drive a Cadillac, nobody will." Rat Pack with no Sammy wouldn't be right. There's a great story about George Formby, https://en. Wikipedia.org/wiki/George_Formby, the ukulele playing 1940s British singer/actor, and his wife. Later that year the Formbies toured South Africa shortly before formal racial apartheid was introduced. While there they refused to play racially segregated venues. When Formby was cheered by a black audience after embracing a small black girl who had presented his wife with a box of chocolates, National Party leader Daniel Francois Malin, who later introduced apartheid, telephoned to complain. Beryl replied, "Why don't you piss off, you horrible little man?" Elaine Brown, only female chair of the Black Panther Party, was in a relationship with an acquaintance of Sinatra and the Rat Pack when she was young, and in her autobiography she tells a story about going to Vegas with them and her guy raising holy hell and leveraging all of their clout, and organized crime connections, over a salon refusing to serve her. This TIL made me think of that anecdote, that's all. Black people fucking hated Sammy Davis, didn't they? White people didn't respect him because he's black, and black people yelled at him for being an Uncle Tom. It's interesting how simple stuff like this can shift things. Benny Goodman paved the way for a lot of acts to start including black members and boycott segregated venues by deciding he could get plenty of work outside the South, and before that OK Records massively popularized black music by recording and selling race records and expanding their marketing when they noticed white people were also buying. Also, country music and a lot of black genres broke out of obscurity because of the ASCAP boycott, when they were the only acts the radio stations could get. Benny Goodman, the white big band jazz musician, also deserves a lot of credit for his work at fighting segregation, and he was doing it decades before the Rat Pack existed. Benny Goodman helped racial integration in America. In the early 1930s, black and white musicians could not play together in most clubs and concerts. In the southern states, racial segregation was enforced by Jim Crow laws. Goodman hired Teddy Wilson for his trio and added vibraphonist Lionel Hampton for his quartet. In 1939 he hired guitarist Charlie Christian. This integration in music happened 10 years before Jackie Robinson became the first black American to enter Major League Baseball. Goodman's popularity was such that he could remain financially viable without touring the South, where he would have been subject to arrest for violating Jim Crow laws. According to Jazz by Ken Burns, when someone asked him why he played with that nigger, referring to Teddy Wilson, Goodman replied, "I'll knock you out if you use that word around me again." SRC, https://en. Wikipedia. org/wiki/Benny_Goodman. He did this too. https://www. American Rhetoric. com/movie speeches/movie a speech the house alive in, HTML. Sinatra was a great man. He saved my dad's life. Two guys were beating him up and Frank said, "Okay, he's had enough." Credit Jackie Mason. Seriously, as a former Vegas resident, what I heard was that the Rat Pack helped desegregate Las Vegas by virtue of the fact that they wouldn't go into any casino where Sammy Davis Jr. wasn't allowed. Black performers performed on the Strip for decades before Las Vegas desegregated. Even the most famous had to enter through the kitchens at first. Eventually, headliners were allowed in the hotels and casinos. Infamously, Harry Belafonte brought his family and they used the pool. The next day, they drained and sanitized the pool. There's a great video of Frank Sinatra and Louis Armstrong singing together and it really shows how classy those two were. Too lazy to link, but it's on YouTube. If you actually read the article, it was the NAACP who finally got it desegregated through direct negotiation with the city. Jack Benny was the same. Even though Rochester is considered very stereotypical these days, off-screen Jack had some issues with people and places because of Eddie Anderson. He moved the whole cast from several hotels because they wouldn't allow Eddie Anderson to even enter, never mind stay there. In Joan Benny's book, which contains except of Jack's own unpublished autobio, he mentions going on a tour during wartime and meeting a sergeant who said he loved Rochester and would walk 10 miles to see him, but when Jack asked if he would sit down and eat with him at the same table, the sergeant said, "Well, sir, I come from a part of the country where we don't sit down with nigras." Jack responses with, "I thought so, young man, and that's why I didn't bring Rochester on this trip. I didn't want him to be embarrassed and humiliated by ignorant folks like you. You say you love Rochester. You'll walk 10 miles to see him perform. But you won't sit down at the same table and drink a glass of Coca-Cola with him. You make me sick. Course, Jack was Jewish and I'm sure had experienced some prejudice of his own.